Just a warning, this might be a very long video because this is probably one of my favorite games in the series and actually probably one of my favorite games in general, so will this be very objective? Probably not. Then again, I do like complaining, so it might be. Either way, I don't think it'll be long before this will be my second favorite game, so without any further delay, let's get into the video. This is the Retro Cave and welcome to In Retrospect. We start the game not as Sora, but Roxas, some kid living in Twilight Town who gets no exposition. You're just him. Now deal with it. If you've played Chain of Memories, it makes sense why you're not playing as Sora, but still, this Roxas kid is a mystery. If you've already played Kingdom Hearts Days, however, you're playing the games in the wrong order. Not knowing who Roxas is part of the game. You're not supposed to know who he is. And unlike many people seem to believe, Kingdom Hearts Days isn't a game meant to fill you in on Roxas and get you up to speed for Kingdom Hearts 2. It's meant to fill in the details about the character after you've played Kingdom Hearts 2. If you play Days first, the whole Roxas story and its relevance in the plot for this game will be ruined. Anyways, during a summer vacation, Roxas gets in a little bit of trouble. There's thieves active in Twilight Town and the rivaling gang accuses Roxas and his friends of being these thieves. Of course, not long after we start the game, the real thieves show up, and it seems like they have the power to steal words too, as well as the items they take. How this works or why this works is never explained, it just kinda happens. This gives us the perfect opportunity for some tutorials, at which point you'll notice how this game plays more or less the same as Kingdom Hearts 1. This game is a little smoother, but for now it feels roughly the same. Not until later on in the game, when you unlock more abilities, will you feel how much smoother and faster paced this game actually is. Another new addition in this tutorial section is the reaction commands, small quick-time events which will help you get a small, or in some cases huge advantage over the enemy you use it against. These help break up the gameplay from just mashing the attack button until you win. Then again, they are a little overpowered at times and makes the game a lot easier than it needs to be. After you deal with these thieves, it's time to call it a day, and that night Roxas starts having strange dreams about Sora. Of course, we can see these as flashbacks, or rather memories, from Kingdom Hearts 1, but Roxas doesn't seem to have a clue who this boy is and why he's dreaming about him, setting up the mystery of who the hell Roxas even is more. On top of that, we see two men in some sort of basement being shady. Everything seems important, but still at the moment is disconnected. And that's just the first half an hour of the game, most of which are cutscenes. Still, we're Roxas, a normal teenager with a normal life, and he just wants to go to the beach with his friends. And what do you need for a train ticket? Yeah, money. So it's time to get a job. Funny thing is, you don't actually need to get any significant amount of money, whatever the game wants you to think. Some of these jobs are fun though. Doing the cargo climb is the quickest way to make a decent amount of money, but post delivery isn't bad either. My personal favorite is performing a street show where you have to hit a ball up into the air without letting it touch the ground. Every hit you get is a point. Based on your points, you'll get a different payout. There is a 4-digit score counter though, which you realistically won't need. Even a triple-digit score is rather difficult, even when you return later on in the game with a full set of abilities. Let's skip over Roxas' summer vacation though. While it's a very interesting way to start a game and very fun to play, this is what you need to know. Since the events of Chain of Memories, Sora has been sleeping. Somehow the sleeping pod, which should have been in Castle Oblivion, is actually in Twilight Town. Let's not get too deep into that. Diz and this guy who seems to be Ansem are working to wake Sora up from his sleep, but need Roxas to do so since part of Sora's memories are inside Roxas. Oh yeah, and Naminé is here too, doing all our kind of memory magic. You go through some more tutorial fights in the dive to the hard area where you actually pick a staff, shield or sword, just like in the first game, which decides your playstyle and the order of unlocking abilities. You also run into a guy named Axel who claims to be your friend. You run away from him a couple of times and you end up fighting him. And you also have double keyblades now. After which you join with Sora and the real game starts now. That's pretty much the shortest I can explain it all. Oh yeah, the sword, shield and staff choice is less important since now you get all of the major abilities not by leveling up, instead by beating bosses, which means you can't just level up to level 100 and have all the abilities. Of course you'll still be very powerful, but for certain abilities you'll just need to play the story. It's mostly just a way for the developers to control how quickly you power up. And honestly, they did that job well, so I don't mind. One of these abilities is aerial recovery, which you get very early on in the game. It allows you to recover from being knocked into the air. And this seemingly simple ability changes the whole game. Now you can recover and go right back into an air combo after being attacked, making the gameplay much higher paced. Now that we're Sora, there's some things obvious right away. Mostly, Sora looks older, taller, and his clothes are too small. Of course, with the new game and more serious threats, you need to upgrade his outfit to be less childish, and making them look smaller on him is a great way of doing that, since he is going through puberty and just spent a year sleeping. Anyway, Sora goes right back to looking for Riku and King Mickey. In Kingdom Hearts 1 he might have found and saved Kairi, which is now back on Destiny Island, but that's only half of his objective. He needs to find Riku too, and Donald and Goofy are still looking for their king.
Now that I mention it, you didn't really accomplish a lot in Kingdom Hearts 1, did you?
And because the plot is very convenient, all this worked out his plan to insane detail. It just so happens that there's a train going from Twilight Town to the Mysterious Tower, the place where Yen Sid lives, and which is a totally separate world than any other game it appears in. Details though. This is where we meet Pete. He seems to be the only one left from the Disney bad guys trying to revive Maleficent. The thing is, we didn't ever see him before, which makes sense, because he's still alive and we murdered every bad guy we walked into, but it still feels like a little bit of cheap storytelling and a bad excuse to revive Maleficent. And for what reason? She doesn't really do anything of importance in this game. And so, we ignore the whole Pete and Maleficent storyline, let's go talk to Yen Sid, who explains to us that after defeating Ansem in the last game, our adventure is not yet over. There is a new enemy. Without going into too much detail, when a Heartless is born, so is a Nobody as its counterpart. A group of these Nobodies has banded together to form Organization 13, and now that Sora is awake, it's time to teach them a lesson. This is where you get some new clothing, a new Keyblade and his first dry form. These are transformations, all with their own powers, but for now we only have the Valor form. A form that increases your strength, combos and gives you a second Keyblade to put its new powers to good use. With a new Keyblade, a new form and new clothes, we're ready to take off in our gummy shop to a whole new world. And when we land there, it's Hollow Bastion, but less evil. And there's actually people living here now. This world has replaced Traverse Town as the home for the Final Fantasy characters and the central area Sora keeps coming back to. This time, however, it's actually located in the center of the map, so you don't have to travel as much. Talking about which, the traveling with Gummy Ship was boring and tedious before. And while it still is an on-rail shooter segment, it's much higher pace and there's an absolute shitload of enemies and lasers going on everywhere. Just like the regular gameplay picked up a lot of speed, so did the Gummy Ship. They just picked up a lot more speed. And that's for the best, because now they're actually fun to play, allowing you to do challenges and collect new blueprints on the way, rewarding you for doing well.
Back down on Earth, or Hollow Bastion, I guess.
We get our first magic spell. Because this is a new game, we need an excuse for Sora to relearn all of his abilities, and so we learn our first new spells. You'll soon find out that the fire spell is now way different. It used to be a homing version of Blizzard, but now it's more of a fire shield around you, and while that might sound like a worse spell, believe me, it makes it infinitely better. We also run into Organization 13 for the first time. However, if you pay attention, you'll see there's way less of them than 13, making our task of defeating them just that much easier. You see, in the last game, Chain of Memories, we pretty much killed half of the organization. But we can still fight those members as long as you have the final mix version of the game. How do you know what version you have? Well, unless you're playing the original PlayStation 2 version of the game, you either went out of your way to import the final mix from Japan, or you have the HD remaster, which is the final mix version 2. Enough about the main plot though, who cares about that? It's Disney time. We get to pick either Beast Castle or Land of Dragons. While the Land of Dragons doesn't offer anything plot related, it's a fantastic world and lets you play around with your new mechanics such as dry forms. Then we go to Beast Castle. You meet an organization member here who is meddling with Beast's story. And if you like the Land of Dragons, Beast Castle is so much more awesome.
Get prepared to hear that a lot, because this game is just improvement upon improvement.
Now it's time to return to a world we've seen before, yet it's different. Hollow Bastion already did this, of course, but this is the first returning Disney world, and going to Olympus Coliseum only to find out it's not at all about tournaments and there's an actual story here? Going into the underworld? That tells you that while this game and some of these worlds might be similar to the last game, they're by no means the same, and that's a promise that holds up throughout the whole game. So next up we visit a world we've been waiting to see more of since Kingdom Hearts 1. We actually get to go to Mickey's homeworld, Disney Castle. Of course the king isn't home and the world is rather small. As a matter of fact, there's only a single room in this game which hasn't been shown in a cutscene before, but inside this room we find a portal to a whole different world, Timeless River. In the first game, we got a costume in Halloween Town to keep Sora and the gang from clashing too much with the art style of that world. This time around, that concept has been upgraded a little. The first time we see it is in Timeless River, where everything looks black and white with muffled sound. But not only that, our characters actually look like 20s cartoons with slender limbs and simplistic designs. This is even used to show the difference between the present day Pete, which has invaded this world, and the Pete from the past, who has done nothing wrong and gets caught in the crossfire. Even an older version of Mickey shows up. This world shows the best use of art style as an actual artistic tool, while also being the most Disney out of all the Disney worlds. We then visit some more Disney worlds where nothing of interest happens. Some of them are returning worlds like Agrabah, which is now completely different, and Halloween Town, which has now been expanded, now including Christmas Town, and a specific new outfit for inside Christmas Town too. There's also Port Royal, which isn't a very good world. The gameplay is boring and you just end up going from place to place way too much, and it generally feels more like a fetch quest than an actual pirate adventure.
Then again, I suppose pirate adventures are just fetch quests.
On top of all that, the art style clash in Halloween Town might have been a little jarring, but here, this just weirds me out. Strangely enough, Jack Sparrow has actually done pretty well, but the environments and especially the pirate enemies in skeleton form look way too photorealistic to go well with the cartoonish Disney style of Kingdom Hearts. Of course that's photorealistic for PlayStation 2 standards. Let's hope it matches better with a more powerful hardware and a change in art style. That leaves us with just one Disney world to go to, the Pride Lands, and boy oh boy, this is my favorite world in the whole game. Not only because you're a lion, but also because you're a lion. The gameplay as a lion just feels so good, and the increased speed you have in this world means that the maps are also a lot larger. The largest map in the game can be found in this world, and it's also where you'll eventually fight the largest boss in the game. Okay, maybe Hydra and one of the final boss forms are larger, but the Ground Shaker is a completely mobile enemy, which feels like a shadow of the Colossus fights. While this is all going on, we see cutscenes of how Kairi leaves the safety of Destiny Islands because Axel comes after her. This is where the real plot actually starts to develop. We've been to so many worlds and only now do we get some actual story, which means that we go right back to where we started, Twilight Town. Don't worry, we don't play as Roxas again, but we do run into a bunch of organization members, all of which call us Roxas. This is where we go to every world we've already been to, but defeating nobodies there instead of Heartless, but not before we go to visit Hollow Bastion. There is one more world we need to visit before our tour of the second visits officially starts. Space Paranoids, a digital world based on Tron. Yes, Tron, not Tron Legacy. We'll get to that later. Around this time, a lot of exposition is dropped on you, and to prevent this from being a boring video, and to prevent this video from literally being an hour long, I'll try to sum them up quickly. The guy you killed in Kingdom Hearts 1 wasn't Ansem, he was a Heartless of a man named Xehanort.
Remember that name.
This man split himself into a Heartless, which you killed, and a Nobody, which now leads Organization 13. Their goal is to use you to collect hearts from the Heartless to make Kingdom Hearts and get hearts of their own.
What?
And if you look closely, very, very closely, you can pinpoint the exact moment this series goes from a fun adventure to a convoluted and confusing fuel for conspiracy theorists, myself included. Anyway, Xemnas has a secret chamber called the Chamber of Repose, in which he keeps some armor and a keyblade, which he calls his friend. He also is looking for the Chamber of Waking, in which he will find another friend. These are some details that hint to what was to come in Birth by Sleep, and might even hold some clues for Kingdom Hearts 3, which is about to be released now, well over 10 years after these cutscenes were actually made. It's all very confusing, so let's skip ahead a little bit. You fight your first real battle against an organization member and win. You kill Damix, and that starts the hunt for the actual organization. Before you can do that, however, you'll need to kill 1,000 Heartless. Yeah, no, I mean it. There's literally 1,000 of them. This might be one of my favorite fights in the whole series, and judging by the trailers, Kingdom Hearts 3 will have an even more epic version of this. Now your gummy routes have all been closed and it's time to go through all the worlds a second time. These visits are much shorter and have less voice acting. It honestly feels like artificial stretching for game time, and I really don't mind it that much. There's an actual overarching story being told now. The first time around you helped all of these people with their problems, and now they're helping you with yours. You end up taking out another organization member in Beast's castle, Zaldin, in a very awesome fight which can be rather difficult at times. This is also probably the first time where you will be saved by Mickey. In certain fights which are more difficult than average, when you die you'll have a chance to be saved by Mickey, who can deal some damage by attacking with either his Keyblade or magic. Or you could also revive Sora. When Mickey dies however, you don't get to revive Sora obviously. The first time you have a 100% chance of Mickey coming to your rescue, and after that it's a matter of luck, with your chances getting lower and lower each time Mickey actually saves you. I think it's a neat way of balancing the more difficult bosses in the game. If you want to challenge yourself, you won't use Mickey, or you won't even see him because you don't want to die. But if you're a little younger or probably just not as good at the game as you need, Mickey is there to help you get the upper hand in a battle, so you at least don't get stuck on a difficult boss. The second half of the return visits are pretty awesome. You battle against a giant genie Jafar, against a zombie Heartless which has the same curse on it as a pirate in Port Royale, where you have to actually return the medals to the chest in order to hit him. And of course you get to finally face the Ground Shaker, one of the most awesome boss battles in the game. After some more filler content in Hollow Bastion, it's time for the last stretch, going to the organization's homeworld and dealing with them once and for all. And where better to end the game than in Twilight Town, which now has a gummy ship mission, and of course it's the most awesome and difficult one yet. Now we're here and finally join forces with King Mickey to end this mess and kill any nobody that stands in our way. We find out there's a second Twilight Town. There's one where Sora exists, the real Twilight Town, and there's a digital copy Diz made for Roxas to keep him hidden from the organization. Going into this digital town we find a way to enter the organization's stronghold, but before we can get there a crazy amount of nobody show up. As luck would have it though, we are joined by Axel, who chose this exact moment to turn to the good side and save Sora instead of trying to kill him to get Roxas back. Axel literally blows himself up to save Sora from the nobodies and becomes a good time just in time to die. Wait, Axel is Darth Vader?
Don't worry though, this guy is way too marketable to die.
Now everyone, this is it, the world that never was. Even before we get to the castle from which the organization operates, we run into a character wearing their signature robes. Of course we have to fight him, but instead of a normal battle, it's a one-on-one in the dive to the heart area, and it's Keyblade versus Keyblade. Yes, this is Roxas we're fighting. In the original game this was just a cutscene, but in the final mix it's an actual fight and it's one of my favorites in the whole game. It's difficult for sure. But that's exactly why you feel Roxas' anger at why Sora is chosen instead of him. They are equally matched and Sora is just barely able to defeat Roxas, after which he accepts Sora is the one to take down the organization. Everyone is here now. Kairi is in prison, but Naminé shows up to save her. They get caught and the guy who looks like Ansem shows up to save them both, and it turns out to be Riku. He has his own Keyblade now and even gives Kairi a Keyblade of her own. This shows up and turns out to be the true Ansem the Wise, former master of Xehanort before Xehanort betrayed him and took his name. And really, this is just where all the puzzle pieces come together. You track down and defeat the last remaining members of the organization. All of them keep calling you Roxas, which finally leads to the reveal we all suspected. When Sora released his own heart in Kingdom Hearts 1, and nobody was born, which is Roxas. But because he also released Kairi's heart, a second nobody was created too, Naminé. Does this make much sense? Not really, but if you're trying to make sense out of things at this point in the series, you're just torturing yourself. Now it's time to face Xemnas himself. Beating form after form after form, you finally manage to defeat him and end the game. Finally. You're left with some optional post-game content like the Cavern of Remembrance, a dungeon with very powerful enemies which require you to max out all of your drive forms. When you complete this, you'll be able to face the data versions of all 13 organization fights, which are very difficult and only meant for you to face once you've reached maximum level. There's also some extra tournaments in the Colosseum which are pretty difficult, but most of all, there's the Lingering Will. possibly the most difficult boss fight in the whole series to this day. I really hope Kingdom Hearts 3 goes all out and adds a fight that's even more difficult. Some people say Birth by Sleep has some more difficult fights, but the insane amount of HP combined with the wide range of attacks makes this guy unbeatable. And while this fight might not be canonical, the character certainly is, and it's ready to appear in Kingdom Hearts 3.
So in retrospect, I don't think I need to add anything to what I've already said. This is the longest video on my channel so far, and I think soon it'll be overtaken by the Kingdom Hearts 3 video. Until then, there's still a little time left before its release, so go brush up on the series before its epic conclusion. And this game, Kingdom Hearts 2, is by far the most fun I've ever had with any game.